So Greg, we're going to start with you.
Greg Kesterman, Health Commissioner for Hamilton County.
And County Commissioner Denise Driehaus.
Tommy DePuccio, Waste Generator Representative.
Talbot, Hamilton County Resource. Lisa Daria, Hamilton County Administration. Sue Magnus, City of Cincinnati.
Bob Geddard, Public Representative.
Matt Wallard, Corning Township, trustee president.
Fong Chen, Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office.
And Brad Johnson, Director of Hamilton County Environmental Services.
All right.
Chair Warren, Hamilton County Resource. Ashley, Hamilton County Environmental Services. Ray, Hamilton County Resource.
And Ron Rivers, Councilperson from North Bend.
Lisa Kosher, Legal on the Waters of the Cincinnati area.
Tim Mara from Oxbow. Lee Talbot, Hamilton County Resource. Carrier Resources.
Karen Lucan, Economic Environmental Solutions and Consultant to the district.
Kevin Ty, Chief of Staff to the County Commissioner.
All right, thank you all. Thank you all for being here. We will move to opening comments. Welcome, everyone. Clerk's report and approval of the minutes. We've all had a chance to look at the minutes. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions to the minutes? Going to entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you all. We will now move to public comments. I've got two speakers' cards. Tim Mara?
Can I speak instead, maybe it's item 5 on the agenda?
Yes. Marie, the same?
Well, I have another general comment, so.
Okay, come on up. Pleasure of the floor for 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you for that. My 3 minutes. As I mentioned, my name is Marie Kosher, and I'm representing the legal fleet of Women Voters of the Cincinnati area here. And I'm here once again to encourage you to add to the 5-year plan the amendments that have been talked about ad nauseam, possibly the one for the universal trash, recycling, and organics. I think that they belong in the 5-year plan. There's no way we're going to get anywhere without these important programs that need to be included. We won't get to zero waste as the plan is currently written, and so I think even the goal of the draft plan, 1% reduction of waste per year, is just not. The only word I can use for it is pathetic. Is that it's not going to get us anywhere to deal with our solid waste problems. I also would like to speak just briefly here now, as long as I'm standing here, about the fees that are going to be on the agenda that would increase the tipping fee for out-of-district waste from $2 to $4 per ton. I support that also, and I think that should be in the I think it's very innovative. Well, it's not innovative, but I think it is a good possibility for dealing with our solid waste. And I would like to address the fact that I believe one of our policy members here has a conflict, and I believe, according to Ni Fong Chin, she said the prosecutors said that that person is not allowed to vote on items that would be a conflict of interest. So I'd like to just make that point. Thanks again. I'm like a broken record, I know, but I think these things are really important. Thank you.
Thanks, Marie. Are there any folks on,
No, there is not.
all right, thank you.
Oh, actually, I apologize. There is one.
Okay.
Jason Penn.
Right?
Good to go, Jason.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hi.
The pleasure of the floor for 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sonia, and this is my son, Hoyt. My little boy knows how important air quality is. He knows that smell isn't a nuisance, it's a warning. He even understands that pollution is profitable. He also understands that matters of environmental health are real, not rare. Considering our late Aunt Maggie's drinking water was once contaminated with uranium. Just 3 years ago, my son was covered in blisters head to toe. He experienced facial tics. As a mother, I have zero tolerance for pollution and toxic air quality when it comes to my children's health. Instead of passing the problem off to another family, we demolished our home and all of our belongings inside of it. It was an easy decision that we based on people over profit. Environmental health and ethics. When decisions are being made that affect my children's right to clean air and water, they should not be made by someone who, on behalf of Rumpke, attended meetings for zoning amendments, requested air permit exemptions to conduct pilot studies, and prepared reports and services for landfill expansions. That is a voting member who stands to profit from the very people, like my son, who he should be regulating. This is not privileged information. Rather, it's a perfect example of what being privileged exemplifies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to you and your son for joining us. Okay.
It just says iPhone. So iPhone, you are good to go. You can unmute on your end.
They're still muted, aren't they?
Yeah.
You're still muted on your end if you're trying to speak.
We can't hear you.
So if someone has their hand up, the indication on our end is iPhone. Please unmute yourself if you'd like to speak. There we go.
Are you waiting for me?
Yes? Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I was wondering if the committee could please require, can you hear me?
Can you please identify yourself?
I'm sorry, it's Carrie Davis.
Okay. Got the pleasure of the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you. A couple things. One, I was wondering if the committee please require Mr. DiPuccio to produce his generator permit as required for a generator of trash services. He's required to complete this annually if he is in fact a generator. And he is also required to report his revenues from the generation of trash to the IRS. So if Mr. DiPuccio is in fact a generator of garbage, could the committee please require him to produce the documents that demonstrate that he is a generator of garbage as defined by the US EPA and the IRS? Secondly, I would like to express my disgust with the Board of Commissioners removing the Solid Waste Committee from the approval process and review process and putting it in the hands of just a couple individuals who have the discretion to either hear issues, not hear them, respond, or not respond to the public. These committees were established in the 1980s to evade the corrupt practices that have been dominating the country for decades. And the Board of Commissioners, through this new policy, have invited corruption right back in by removing the voices of particularly our public representatives on this committee. That is a part of the public discourse and requirements in the solid waste industry, is for this committee to be making these decisions and be intimately involved. Further, Lisa Wynn raised at a recent meeting the conflicts of interest by the woman who is writing parts of our plan and doing studies. I would like to see the committee require her to produce a financial disclosure document expressing specifically the work she has done in the last 10 years that involve Mr. DiPuccio's company in any way, as well as Rumpke or any other landfill operator. I'm aware that she has co-authored articles with Mr. DiPuccio that express how wonderful Rumpke is and in their recycling efforts, and I find her conflict to be apparent. Thirdly, I am very concerned that this committee is under the impression that Michelle Balls is their supervisor and of their practices. Ms. Balls is an optional employee that is hired by the committee to serve at the pleasure as an administrative assistant. She is not even supposed to see legal opinions that have not been approved by this committee to be released to her. The
Carrie, your
Ms.
time
Driehaus,
has expired. Could you please summarize?
yes, Ms. Driehaus has made a point that this board is not under the control of the commissioners, and therefore Ms. Driehaus does not have the authority to release to Ms. Bowles or any other employee of this committee any information. Ms. Bowles works at the pleasure and direction
Thank you
of.
for your comments, Carrie. Your time is up. Thank you. All right. Let's move on through our agenda. And by the way, at the end of the agenda, I will talk about the rules because they were passed at the Board of County Commissioner level, and I think we have not met since then. So I'll give an update on that. Oh, Tim wanted to be saved until another item, until later on the agenda. All right.
And at the end, the conflict of interest, can we get an update?
And yes, we have a conflict of interest response as well. So let me, well, why don't we can take them up at the pleasure of the committee. Let's go to item 4, and then under policy items for discussion, I'll give an update.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so let's go to item number 4, revenue updates, analysis, attachment B. Michelle?
This is attachment B, so it's comparing through, revenue through the end of September. And overall, our revenue is up about 6% over last year. We have decreased only about 1% of in-district, so almost remained steady there. Out-of-district has increased by about 8%, or 78,000 tons, and out-of-state has increased about 13%, or 10,000.
That concludes your report?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, I got a couple,
Yeah.
couple of comments.
Yep.
One, my usual comment, Tier 2 is 54% of district revenues, and you've heard from me on that before. But also a second comment, our upcoming presentation from our consultant notes additional sources of revenue that the district might want to consider when she speaks of it. So, I often speak of the district looking towards different types of revenue, and that might be something to look at. So that's my 2 comments.
Thank you. Anybody else?
And just correction, the tonnage is 54%, but the dollars are 70%.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to item number 5, policy items for discussion. So I will give an update regarding the rules. So we did pass revised rules at the board meeting. It's been probably about a month ago now. And as you'll recall, to take us back in time, we had a request from citizens to respond to actions that Rumpke was taking out of Whitewater Township. Whitewater Township does not have any zoning, and so therefore, there was no recourse other than to go to the Board of County Commissioners to ask for rules to be promulgated by the board. And so the board turned to the policy committee, Solid Waste Policy Committee and staff, the experts in the field, to give us some direction there. So we had a set of rules originally, and we got sued by Rumpke. And so we went into mediation on that. The legal term perhaps is something else, but I call it mediation. We came to a conclusion there, and so the revised rules came before the county commission. I do want to talk just a little bit about what was in there, because what we were trying to address were concerns that were not addressed through the EPA process, but were concerns to the constituents and the folks that live in this general area. And so I want to read just a little bit of what was passed so people are aware of it. So under the community impact part of the rules that were passed, it talks about the applicant having to do a narrative about certain things, and I want to make sure that people know that some of these things were included. So the applicant's plans, actions, and commitments to mitigate substantial negative impacts, if any, to human health, safety, and the environment, including, and these are for examples, these are in the ORC, so these are things that could be included. Requirement that noise, dust, odors, and vermin are collected so as not to cause a nuisance, health hazard, or water pollution. It talks about setbacks, it talks about groundwater, it talks about surface water, and so all of this is delineated in the rules, landscaping, lighting, screening, a number of things. These are the kinds of things that we were concerned about, and that the constituents had brought to our attention. And so I would, I hope everyone has seen a copy of the rules if you so desire to read them. I'll be happy to provide them if you have not. But as I said, these were passed. So if there is a reason then to have the rules kick in, if Rumpke, or any other, hauler or waste collector, comes with a plan, these things have to be, responded to in that plan, and then the county commissioners, who have the authority, to hold the meetings and to render an opinion here, will have public hearings. We have to have at least one, I believe, but more at our discretion. Public hearings where people would be notified to get public input and comment, and that's the process. The, policy committee, Michelle, the administrator would weigh in, the director, and then ask the policy committee for some direction and comment as well. But in the end, Michelle or the director would be someone we would turn to for her expertise to weigh in on, what would be provided to the Board of County Commissioners. So that's my, review in a nutshell. So I just wanted to bring everybody up to date because I know it's been a major concern for members of the committee and the public at large. And so I wanted to reiterate what action was taken by the board. Yes, Bob.
Yeah, I think Whitewater Township's being kicked under the bus on the zoning issue. State of Ohio, permits, and authorizes zoning codes for townships, municipalities, and so forth. And, Colerain Township actively utilizes the codes, the zoning codes, and there's a landfill in Colerain Township. And there's many, many landfills that have been closed throughout Hamilton County that the health commissioner actually investigates and visits, most of them closed, throughout Cincinnati, throughout the city of Cincinnati, and I live pretty close to one of those closed landfills. And they're visited on a very frequent basis. But of note, there is no zoning code authorized by state code, limiting or zoning out landfills. There's no mention of landfills in the zoning code. So I just want to note that Whitewater Township can't zone out landfills. It's not a zoning issue. It is zoning is a land regulation, that Whitewater Township could opt to on certain land restrictions, but landfills can't be restricted out. So I just want that to be noted.
Thank you. Anybody else have a comment? Okay, thank you. The second item that is not on the agenda is the conflict of interest opinion that was sent out today. And Nifong, I'm gonna leave it to you to talk to this.
Actually, Andrea Newworth is on.
All right.
Who actually authored the opinion.
Okay.
To answer any questions for the policy members.
All right, very good. And we just did receive this afternoon, so.
Oh, okay.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So I have not thoroughly read through it, I'll admit. So we can either take this up now, or we can review it at our next meeting. I have not had an opportunity to digest what's in here, but we did request an opinion, we got an opinion, and so,
Do you need a copy?
I think I'd like to read it before.
well, that,
Yeah, we have a.
it's challenging to
That would be
have a thorough
Yes,
discussion.
please.
So, but I guess the update then is, we did get the opinion, we all have it, and so why don't we put it on the agenda for the next meeting? So people can take a look at it, and we'll talk about it then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andrea, I didn't mean to, yeah, so that was
That's okay.
sort of, yeah.
That's all good. I
Thank
can
you.
join next time. So have a good meeting. Thank you, guys.
That sounds
Appreciate
good, thank you. Okay. All right, Hamilton County Solid Waste Plan update, and Michelle, am I kicking to you for, and Karen?
Yes.
For the.
So the first item is going to be, the research that the committee requested, at the last meeting regarding the out-of-district fee increase. So I'm gonna pull up Karen's presentation. Karen will keep
Ms. Collins?
While Michelle is pulling that up, thank you for letting me help you look at this issue from kind of a data analytical perspective. I promised to have it done by January. I felt like enough of it was finished for this meeting, and considering the timeliness of the topic, I felt ready to prepare or present.
Can I have you on hold for 1 second?
Yes.
I've got 2 speakers cards still, and I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, yeah, go ahead.
But, Sally, I didn't have yours originally, so would you, we've passed through the public comment. Would you like to speak at this juncture? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, let's do that. I
No,
apologize.
that's fine.
And Tim said he wanted to comment, 5A, and we're there. So let's get Sally up here first. Sally Danum, I don't need to be overly,
Danamiller.
informal. Sally Danamiller.
Yeah, I slipped in a little bit late.
Yeah.
And it's good I'm going before Tim, because I've read what he's gonna say, and he's so eloquent, and I agree with everything that Tim has to say, in his opinion. So I'm here today representing Sierra Club Miami Group. We support the zero waste movement, and zero waste, sounds like a really big goal, which it is, and we can't get there until we start making movement towards it. So, in order to do this, make it a reality, we have to, make certain efforts. And one that we support is universal trash collection, as well as universal access to recycling and universal access to organic collection. These things are necessary, and honestly, if we can't take in trash and regulate taking in trash and regulate where it's going to, what are we all doing here? I mean, we might as well just go out to an early cocktail hour. So at any rate, we understand that Dieter's office has issued an opinion regarding the Hamilton County Solid Waste District's ability to do that, under this committee. And, I think that, one, that's ridiculous. I mean, we need to be able to say all people should be required to have a waste hauler, unless we want to sell every single person in this county a sticker and have them drive to the dump and dump their things. And that's not going to happen here. So, we would like to see a copy of this opinion, and we think there should be transparency since it's a public issue. We also support the increase of the out-of-district tipping fees. No, we haven't gotten to that yet on this agenda, to $4. 55% of our landfill is other counties' waste. And why are we diddling around with really small numbers? Other districts take in a lot of out-of-district waste, and they charge for it because we're using up our land for their waste. Also, I want to put in a good word for Bob Gettert. I know his term is about to be up. I would like to see him run again. I've talked to him about that. I think he's invaluable to this diversion of waste issue. And as the president of the recycling, I don't know the whole title.
National Recycling Coalition.
National Recycling Coalition, and all the years of work he's done in this field. He's incredible. We need him, and he should not be replaced. Thank you very much.
It will be up to Bob. Yeah, to everybody. All right, Tim Mara.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I see that today's agenda includes a discussion about a Tier 2 out-of-district fee increase. I urge you to move swiftly to increase those fees to the $4 per ton maximum allowed by law. Paying $4 a ton is the least that adjacent counties should be expected to do in exchange for the privilege of dumping their waste in Hamilton County and pushing off onto Hamilton County the environmental degradation, public health impacts, and nuisances that would be theirs if those counties accepted for themselves the burdens they are shifting to Hamilton County. Your agenda also includes something called aspirational diversion goal. I wish instead of aspirational goals, your agenda included substantive action to immediately require universal trash collection, universal access to recycling, and access to recycling of organics. That would be true leadership. When it comes to solid waste management, collectively, we are not leaders at all. We are not even ardent followers. We are distant, reluctant followers. That's why progress is so slow as to be barely perceptible. While we sit and do little, our local environmental resources and our health are threatened every day by the mountain of waste we generate. The answer is not to add another mega landfill to the Hamilton County landscape at Bond Road or anywhere else in the county. Rumpke representatives are fond of saying that their industry is heavily regulated. Nothing could be further from the truth. Yes, federal and Ohio regulations are voluminous, but where's the beef? Through its lobbying efforts, the waste industry has seen to it that those regulations are weak and ineffective. Locally, the rules this county adopted last December have been replaced by rules which, at least in terms of process, favor the waste industry over the protection of the environment and the public. And the draft of the updated plan is many pages in length, with lots of good data, but again, where's the beef? Show me how in any way the plan itself adds to the protection of the environment and public health. I anticipate that this afternoon your policy committee will haggle over the scope of the aspirational divergent goal, maybe even end up adopting not a full spectrum, but something in the way of action. While we quibble about words that do almost nothing in the way of action, the clock is ticking. Time is running out on climate change, to which landfills are a major contributing factor. Locally, we ought to at least be diverting waste to minimize the need for expansion of the Bond Road landfill, and maybe as a consequence, minimizing damage to the Whitewater River and the very special environmental resources of western Hamilton County, and protecting the people who live near to the site. Isn't that what this policy committee is supposed to be doing? We need waste diversion not someday, but now. Thank you.
All right, Karen, I'm sorry to have interrupted you. And I will preface this by saying these issues have been in front of us before. We're doing a little deeper dive into some of the issues that have come up before the policy.
Correct.
Yep.
And what I was going to say before, as I'm going through this presentation, we still have more time until January. So if there's things that you want me to look at a bit differently or a little more deep, don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, because I was like, there's a question.
Yeah. Okay. So as we discussed when I was here in September, we wanted to know what's really going on with waste flows in Ohio, the impact of fees. But I also thought before we got there, we've got people on the policy committee. Some have been doing this type of work for decades. Others are relatively new to solid waste management. So I thought there'd be some value in bringing everybody up sort of the same page before we start talking about waste flows. The other part of all of this is we did want to look at, because it was Tier 2, other districts that increase their fees. What does that do to waste flows, revenues, and recycling rates? So in the mid to late 80s, there was a lot of things going on that really have impacted how solid waste is managed today. Resource Conservation Recovery Act. The original Resource Conservation Recovery Act only covered hazardous waste facilities, hazardous waste transportation. In the mid-80s, that was expanded to include Subtitle D. And Subtitle D is what regulates landfills throughout the country. All states have minimum standards. Ohio actually has some standards with liners in certain hydrogeological areas that are even more stringent than the federal law. What Subtitle D and RCRA, though, did not do is address recycling. In this country, we don't even have a standard definition of recycling. There is no standard goal. There is no standard approach. So that was a huge void. So in the mid-80s, we got better about landfills, designing landfills, but we weren't even talking about recycling. The other thing that happened towards the end of the 80s is the New York City garbage barge. This was a barge of garbage that for an entire summer traveled the southeast coast of the United States trying to find a place to dump New York City garbage. It was on Time, Newsweek, U.S. World Report. It was on the nightly news. For the first time, there was awareness of we can't just keep dumping garbage. This is great, the landfills are getting better, but we are going to destroy our environment if we keep this attitude of let's just generate and throw it away. So how did all this affect Ohio? We used to, as Bob said, we used to have dozens of landfills just here in Cincinnati, and I don't even want to call them landfills. They were dumps. We had hundreds, if not thousands, of dumps throughout the state of Ohio. So basically,
And Cincinnati.
and so as the new landfill regulations came into place, all of these dumps started to become replaced with large regional landfills. The reason they became regional is the cost of developing these landfills that are designed and engineered and properly operated cost more money than a dump. So the dumps started closing, we started getting regional. The other thing that started happening in the 80s is the dumps that were operated by cities, and well-meaning cities, now the operators and owners became more of private industry. So you saw a big shift from dumps to regional landfills, public sector to private sector. The other thing that happened in the late 80s and early 90s is regulatory oversight. We now have Ohio EPA, as Denise said, that regulates the construction of the landfill, some operations, but that's supplemented by local health departments who are there on a regular basis monitoring these landfills. The other thing that happened in the late 80s, and this was kind of a game changer for me because it's what I've done for the rest of my life, is the passage of House Bill 592. And that is Ohio's solid waste planning law. And what that law does, it established solid waste districts. So I know we have a lot of conversation of what control does the district have over the county commissioners. Solid waste districts are a separate legal entity. They're chaired by a policy committee. You guys are established by statute. The chairwoman at this time, is a county commissioner. But solid waste districts are not just single districts. We have 37 single county districts and 52 multi-county. And even within Hamilton County, part of our district is outside of Hamilton County. So they're kind of a pseudo-county government, but they're not. And that's why some of the legal opinions get sometimes frustrating. It's like, why can't they just be like a county? Well, they're not. But the other thing with the districts, and this is the core of it, these districts must develop long-term solid waste management plans that say how you're going to manage waste for 15, 20, 25 years. They must decrease dependency on landfills, and they must also demonstrate sufficient disposal capacity. If you don't show in your plan where your trash is going to go, it will not be approved. And this was all driven by the garbage barge. And Ohio is actually one of the first states to have a solid waste planning law. Now, as far as I know, there's 48 states that have solid waste planning laws, where planning is required on a local level. So since then, where we've ended up. So in 2021, Ohio's statewide landfill diversion rate is about 40%. And actually, we are up 10% in 2 years, which I was thrilled to see. And a lot of that is due to the organics that the woman from the Sierra Club is rightly passionate about. We now have, instead of thousands of dumps, we have 30 privately operated landfills and 5 publicly owned and operated landfills. Again, big shift from public to private. The 30 privately operated landfills are located in 20 solid waste districts, and 5 of those 20 districts have multiple private landfills. The other thing I found from my research, and I really did not know where this research was going to take me, but 100% of the private landfills accepted out-of-district, out-of-state waste in 2021. So again, Hamilton County, none of us like landfills, okay? Nobody wants to live by a landfill. But again, 20 districts have them. So then I was wondering, where does Hamilton County rank in all of this? So as you will see, Belmont Jefferson, and I organize these in percentages versus tons, and I can look at it on a ton basis if you guys would like. I have a spreadsheet, but just didn't want to go down the rabbit hole on data. But Belmont Jefferson, 95% of the waste that comes into their district is from either out of state or out of district. Pike, Richland, Brown, I'm not going to go through every one.
Yeah, I was interested in the tipping fees and the landfill, and the district fees and tipping fees.
And I've got that data too.
Okay.
So I didn't think you guys wanted to hear a consultant with a PowerPoint for an hour.
Yeah.
Nothing is more painful. Well, maybe a landfill. So then, like I said, they keep going down. I'm like, where's Hamilton? So you see here, Hamilton at 56%, we're in about the bottom 35 percentile as far as the amount of waste that comes here that is not from Hamilton County. And then the final 5, you can see it's a pretty big drop all the way down to Ottawa, Sandusky, Seneca, and at only 2%. So my next, why is this happening? What are some trends? And Sue, you raised a really good point. Are the fees a driver?
I think part of it, if I get this technology right, a lot of folks do. Sorry. Move it. So a lot of the landfills that are getting a significant amount of non-district waste are on the borders. So a lot of that waste are coming in from out of state, especially on the East Coast. East Coast landfills, $70, $80 a ton. Ours are $20, $30 a ton. A lot of the East Coast has waste energy plants, which are $100 a ton. So that's why you see a lot coming in. Brown County, though, that kind of surprised me. They are way up there in the percentage, and their out-of-state waste is coming from Kentucky. We don't see a lot of out-of-state waste on the west side of the state because Indiana, big landfills, cheap landfills. So again, but I did see, all along the borders of the east and the south, those were the landfills that are getting a lot of out-of-state waste.
So which of the districts on the borders have landfills?
Oh, Sue.
no.
I'm not going to know off the top of my head, but I know like Belmont Jefferson is a big one. Mahoning County has a big one. Athens Hawkins has a big one. Brown County has another big one. So again, in some of them, because of their topography and geography, they can't have landfills. So like a lot of the Hocking Hills area, because of the rock and the hills, it's not suitable for siting landfills. So, and I can do a cross-reference on that for you as well. So then the next is with the whole Tier 2 fee. So obviously waste flows. And one of the things that from a waste industry perspective, it's called vertical waste management. That a company who hauls waste as a waste collector, they tend to want to use their own landfill because it internalizes all their costs. So they'll skip over 3 or 4 counties to go to their own landfill versus a competitor's landfill. So I'll be using that term again, vertical integration. So again, with the out-of-district fees, 7 solid waste districts, and it's going to be pushed a little bit, Sue, with private landfills have a $4 per ton out-of-district fee. So 7 out of the 20 have the highest out-of-district fee. So then I wanted to start looking at, okay, what's happening with these fees? What happens to waste flows? I went through every single district, all 52 solid waste districts. Only 2 districts have increased their out-of-district fees since 2011. As a researcher and analyst, that's driving me kind of nuts because I would have loved 15, 20 different data points. Right now, I only had 2 to work with. So I still went in and said, well, what's happening in these districts? So Coshocton, Fairfield, Licking, Perry, and you can see they're sort of by Columbus, but then they edge on up. It's a 4-county district. They have 4 landfills. They decided in 2017 to raise their fees from $1.25, $3.50 back to $1.25, and then they raised it to $2.42 for in-district, out-of-district, out-of-state waste. And again, as a reminder, the out-of-state waste fee cannot be higher than the in-district fee. It can be lower, it just can't be higher. So then I looked at, well, what happened since 2018? And this is over a 5-year average. So 17, 18, 19, 22. So their average in-district waste increased over that time period. Their out-of-district waste, which was one of the goals of raising that out-of-district fee, did decrease, and it decreased by 44%. However, their out-of-state waste increased by 40%. So their net overall was a 25% increase. Some of that had to do with the fees. The other thing, as I said before,
I would, though, I took a look at their solid waste plan, and it indicated that they had a large amount of waste from Pennsylvania due to a tunnel project.
Well, it's a tunnel landfill.
Right.
But it's waste. It's not MSW, it's waste. But what I'm saying is, what happened...
But it came from Pennsylvania, is what I'm saying.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It went all the way from Pennsylvania to here. But what happened is the Rumpke Company purchased a landfill in Athens Hocking, and they purchased one in Pike County. Rumpke wanted to stay vertically integrated, so a lot of their customers that they had in Coshocton, Fairfield, Licking, Perry, they took it. So that's why your out-of-district went down. But the 4 landfills in there, they still had the same costs, and so there was a huge effort to get more waste from out of state. And so that's why you see this shifting, moving around. Tiny bit had to do with fees, had to do more with the waste industry.
But also, I would argue that it had to do more with the tipping fees, because why would somebody haul their waste 350 miles and drive 5 hours unless they were gonna save money on their tipping fees?
Because the company was vertically integrated.
Okay.
So, and when they're vertically integrated, they internalize those costs. So their hauler that they own is not paying what Waste Management would pay.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that's, I mean, the fee had a little bit to do with it, but honestly, it was more that Rumpke got some new landfills, there was a waste gap in the 4 landfills in Coshocton, and they lowered their fees to get that waste. So, and that's honestly what could happen here as well. So then I looked at, okay, what are we doing with the revenue? So you will see the total amount of revenue that they got increased, and that was one of their goals. They wanted more revenue. But the majority of their district fee revenues came from the out-of-state. If they had not raised that out-of-state fee, if that had not gone $2, they would have been flat. So they would have gotten more waste in the district, but less revenue, or maybe a minor amount of more revenue. So that's why they had to raise the in-district fee, so they could raise the out-of-state fee and get more money.
But it came from out of state in Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania had a $4.25 fee on top of their tipping fees.
Correct.
So their fee made it come here because it was cheaper.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
But again, the revenue, they had to raise the in-district revenue or fee to get the out-of-state fee.
No,
Can't have one.
back up on that. Is that what your data shows and what Sue said? Is that because they were gonna save 25 cents per ton, it drove them to bring the?
I don't think that's what you're saying.
Well, yeah, because it was $4, because Pennsylvania has a $4.25.
They wouldn't go 350 miles for 25 cents.
Right, but you're right, the vertical
Yeah,
integration.
Right, and they lowered their tipping fee.
Yeah, that's contracts, yeah.
So, so then the next one that changed their fee was Crawford County, and Crawford County, as you can see, is really kind of in the middle of the state, up towards the northwest a little bit. They have never gotten any out-of-state waste. And so when they changed their fees, they're like, why do we even worry about out-of-state? So they raised their in-district fee to $2, out-of-district to $4, and then just kept their out-of-state $1, which is legal. You just can't have out-of-state exceed in-district. Their in-district waste decreased, but even with the fee increase, their out-of-district waste increased by 42, 43%. So overall, even though they raised their district fee, again, they didn't save any landfill capacity. And as I said before, I wish I had 12 different data points, but I don't. This is all I have right now, and I don't know why the out-of-district increased in Crawford, because I did not see any mergers, acquisitions, so I don't know, except maybe the district next door also raised their fees. So that is something I'll look at a little bit more. And the same thing with Crawford. They increased their revenue because they increased their fees, but again, most of their revenue increase came from out-of-district. So, and that's a sheer, because they got more tonnage, and they raised their rates. So again, I'm not saying if the district should raise the Tier 2 fee to raise more money. What I am saying is I don't think raising the Tier 2 fee can necessarily save landfill airspace at the landfills in Hamilton County. And I do think there could be a situation, again, that, for example, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Rumpke has the contract with Montgomery County to haul waste from the Montgomery County Transfer Station to the Hughes Road landfill. If Hamilton County raised that tipping fee, they have a contract with Montgomery County to handle that waste. That waste could go to one of the 7 Indiana Rumpke landfills, and Rumpke could take the Indiana waste and scoot it right across the border and bring it here. Now, obviously, all of that is speculative, but I'm saying from what I see where other districts are getting a lot of waste on the state border, I think getting out-of-state waste is a possibility. So you just have to keep that in mind. If that's the goal of raising the fees, I can't say, as your consultant, you'll necessarily save airspace. The other thing I wanted to look at was, okay, through raising the fees and having more money, what did that do to the recycling rate? So again, I did 2017 as the baseline and then averaged the recycling rate over 5 years. Ironically, both Coshocton, Fairfield, Licking, Perry, and Crawford The net increase was about 3%. So where I'm going with that is just having more money injected into the system doesn't necessarily mean you're going to increase recycling. Now, if you have a very specific project, like the composting facility, or you're getting organics collected, that could. But just spending more money in education awareness doesn't always yield higher recycling. And the next slide, and I'm sorry, Sue, but it's kind of a white elephant in the room with this franchise fee. So basically, the city of Cincinnati has a fee that is a 20% assessment on the gross revenues, not net, but gross revenues from the collection of commercial waste and C&D waste. Commercial is defined obviously as businesses, institutions. In Cincinnati, commercial is also any multifamily over 4 units. It's considered commercial collection. And I spoke with your budget office, Karen Albright, I think?
Yeah.
Anyway, since 2017, these fees have generated $22.9 million. Now, it was about $2 million a year for the first couple years. When C&D was included in 2019, that's when there was a jump. And this year, from what Karen shared with me, you're projected to generate about $5.6 to $6 million in fees. So as Bob said, there are other ways to fund systems outside of district disposal fees. I don't know if the county has the legal authority to do any kind of franchise agreement. That is in the plan, though, to be evaluated. Now, one of my goals would be that to award a franchise for someone to collect from businesses their food waste. I mean, that's the biggest barrier, is the collection. So anyway, in addition to the franchise fees, Cincinnati gets about $320,000 a year in the district incentive fee.
RRI.
Residential Recycling Incentive Program. Now, I am going to show this. It does look like the city of Cincinnati had a decrease in their residential landfill diversion rates. In defense of Cincinnati, in 2018, everyone became highly aware that a lot of what people were putting in the recycling containers was trash. And so there was a huge effort from the district and the city to start teaching people to recycle right. And I think part of that tonnage decrease is you're ending up with less trash in the recycling container. I don't feel like this is
And the
indicative of
pandemic.
Yeah.
There was a lot, when people went home, the residential, the
There was a lot more
delivery
trash.
went down, so there's a whole lot more trash at home.
Right.
People are better recyclers at work with peer pressure than they are at home, I'll tell you that.
So again, I don't want this to be,
But yeah, but I was like, why does she have the residential?
But it does kind of show though, I mean, there's a $22.9 million, and it goes to the general fund.
The general fund pays for the recycling program.
Yeah.
Not $22.9 million worth. I mean, this franchise fee is money that
It pays for the trash.
should be,
It pays for trash and
So is
recycling.
that money
Yeah.
tracked through the city's process that is designated to go to waste collection?
not based on my conversation with the woman from the budget office, and I actually looked at your city budget, and even though $2.9 million is a whole lot to me, it's not a big enough line item to have its own tracking through your budget.
Right.
I think in your Greening Cincinnati plan, it should be, because that's,
We're talking about pay-as-you-throw to get it out of the general fund.
well, the city can't have pay-as-you-throw because there's a city charter.
We're talking about a charter amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but that's a lot of money. And so, from a recycling perspective, I mean, you could build an HHW plant, you could have a composting facility, and it's just going to the general fund, so.
Well, it does pay for the trash collection and for the recycling program.
Right.
And the recycling program costs, like between $2 and $3 million
So
a year.
to Tony's question, it's not,
That's for residential only though, right?
Yes.
But I had a
With small exceptions.
question on what's covered. So the gross revenues are just the gross revenues for waste collection if classified as being a recycle that doesn't get.
commercial waste, commercial waste, so that's
The,
businesses, institutions.
That's not dedicated for recycling.
Right,
No, no, no,
the fee is not on recycling. The fee is only on the waste.
If I have waste management picking up at my commercial establishment, I've got 2 containers. I have a recycling container and I have a trash container. What gets the 20% is the revenue what gets.
I think it's just waste.
Only on the trash.
20%
Only on the trash.
tax,
Yeah.
Right,
trash only.
trash only.
Recycle. Okay.
Correct.
So, for my own clarity, clarity, if there's a Kroger sitting in the city of Cincinnati and one in Colerain Township, and they had one dumpster go to the landfill from each, you're saying that one dumpster in the city is 20% more expensive?
So, and I don't know all of the reporting, but I'm assuming that like Rumpke and Waste Management and Bavarian, they have to show how much they charge customers for collection, and that's what the gross revenue is.
And that's and that's funding the residential trash program in the city of Cincinnati?
And the recycling, essentially, although it goes, the recycling program and the trash program are paid out of the general fund, and it goes into the general fund, so it's kind of a, yeah.
It's not earmarked for dedicated
And
funds.
only a city would be able to consider a program similar, so a township or a village?
I don't know, but we have it written in the plan that that is one of the things that, Michelle's team is going to be looking at, is could we award franchises on a countywide basis?
Yeah,
Most,
that would be
most
great.
cities across the country have enterprise funds rather than
Right.
general funds
But
programs.
counties, like I said, even in Ohio, solid waste district is unique that they're able to, they're dedicated funds. I mean, no one can touch the revenue that the district gets from the tiered fees.
That's right.
I think as we as a policy committee look at this, it's interesting that we're also subsidizing a city that has the right. We could look at all of our smaller cities and encourage them to do similar and only subsidize, or think about that differently.
I like that thought.
Yeah.
I,
Because you could build into your franchise that you must offer food waste collection.
And you have to offer recycling
And
to get a
Michelle's team
franchise.
has worked with 4 counties or townships to get them to change from an open system to a more contract-based system. So, and again, quite a bit of the plan discusses that. It just doesn't mandate it.
Greg, I think if I understand the way they just explained it, in terms of sort of what you do. So if you get a fee from, say, for each inspection you do at a restaurant, if that under the kind of program that the county has, that fee would just go into a general pie, but it wouldn't be dedicated to taking care of the cost just for your fee inspections at restaurants.
Which is not how it, I mean,
Right,
yeah,
sure it's not.
yeah. Any program like that is restricted, so if you collect fees for.
And just from a philosophical perspective, that, you know, if the whole goal of this is to reduce reliance on landfills, which it is, I feel like you have to diversify your funding sources from something other than just trash going to the landfill. So again, you know, I'm not on the policy committee, and it's your decision whether or not you want to increase to 2, or from 2 to 4. But again, I don't think it's gonna save a lot of landfill space. And again, you're just still depending on a landfill to fund recycling. That's just my 2 cents worth. So then, in conclusion, you know, all private landfills in Ohio are regional and accept non-district waste. Hamilton County is in the bottom 35% for non-district waste receipts. And the part of that is because we're urban and we get more in-district waste, but part of it is because of, you know, there's other districts that have a whole lot more out-of-state waste coming into them. Increasing the Tier 2 fees may not decrease non-district waste. Out-of-district waste could be replaced with out-of-state waste, especially on state borders, i.e. Hamilton County. Hamilton County, our resource, could generate less revenue unless in-district and out-of-state fees are increased, and that's a whole different conversation with the communities as you go out to ratify this plan. Additional revenue may only slightly increase landfill diversion unless you have a very specific program that you're looking at funding. But just throwing more money at it, we've been throwing money at it for 30 years, and we haven't shifted the needle all that much. And then Cincinnati has significant funds to supplement resource programs. I'm not saying you have to do it all on your own. I don't think you have to fund everybody else. But I would like that $23 million really explored, and how much is it being spent on public service collection and recycling, and to see if there's money left. Are you capturing 100%? Are you only capturing 70%? So I just think that's an opportunity to have recycling, landfill diversion, and not depend on landfills to get it there. That's all I have. Thank you. Yes.
And I've got some comments, and I appreciate your report. I appreciate your research stuff, but some thoughts there. You indicate that all private in landfills in Ohio except non-district. I'm curious why you only indicate private landfills and don't include public.
Because public landfills have the ability to take whatever waste they choose.
Yeah,
So there's landfills that,
And
like in
for-
Erie County, they're like, we're only taking our waste, so no one else can use it.
well,
You don't have that control over the private.
in our research, I realize what our control is, but in our research, we're looking at how the fees impact flows of waste. And public landfills affect fees as well, too. So in looking at public and private landfills across the county, there are 12 districts that raise their fees to $4. 12 districts affecting 20 counties. And so they're speckled across the.
And I can add on public, like I said, the only reason I did not is just that,
I think we should include public, because I realize public facilities have different powers, but we're not looking at their powers, we're looking at their fees. And they're limited to raising their out-of-district fees to $4, just as we are. They have the same fee structure.
well, but they don't, actually, no. So they can have a whole separate tipping fee.
They can have a different tipping fee, but I'm speaking of the in-district, out-of-district, and out-of-state tier structure fees. They have the same limitations that we have.
4 district fees.
And that's what we're looking at, is, and out-of-district fees, we're looking at the effect that it has in raising it to the $4 level, and it's irregardless of whether it's a public landfill or a new.
Now, and, because when businesses are contracting out their waste, or even a municipality, they don't say, oh, we're only gonna do private, we're only gonna do public. It's whatever's cheap.
Well, it
So
depends if the public
literally-
wants to accept their waste.
Now, that's the other issue, is that Franklin County's landfill, operated by SWACO, the Solid Waste District SWACO, they don't accept any out-of-district waste at all. They just completely banned it. They have that power to do so.
Right, they can do whatever they want, and they can charge $100 a ton for the county next door.
So there is some exceptions to the rule there. Hamilton County, you say is bottom 35%, but I'm not looking at how we rank across the state. I'm looking at the fact that 52% of the flow of waste that is deposited in the landfill within Hamilton County is coming from out of district. And our responsibility is for the citizens of Hamilton County and the longevity of the landfill that we have. So how, it's shortening the lifespan of the landfill, and in less than a generation, we'll be building another landfill.
And so will all of the other districts that
It may be
non-district
Rumpke's
waste.
responsibility to build another landfill, but where's it gonna be? Where's the siting of another landfill in 26 years? And that siting process will have to begin in about 18 or 19 years to site another landfill. And that is a short lifespan from now. That is not very far away.
The area, though, you have the most control is what happens of waste generated in Hamilton County.
Right.
So, you don't have control over what Butler County sends here.
We have control of the out-of-district waste by controlling the fee structure.
And I don't think going from 2 to 4, the 2 districts that did have more waste coming in.
And also, that's not the proposal. The proposal is to do incremental increases.
And
I think that if
50 cents a
we
year.
did see some kind of crazy stuff happening, that we could change it.
Let me point out a few things, and I'm recognizing that the fee structure, the $4, is about 10% of what trucks pay for over the scale. It's about 10%. Crawford County, you mentioned in your report, in 2018, St. Mary's landfill closed in Auglaize County. They were taking waste from 11 counties. They were taking, I used to manage that landfill a long time ago, many years
You were associated with the landfill district editor?
Yeah, I was. I
Let me take that note.
sadly admit that.
You had an
Sadly.
epiphany.
I was the district director for Auglaize County. So I sadly admit that. But the St. Mary's landfill closed in 2018. They were taking waste from 11 counties, from haulers from 11 counties. Those haulers from 11 counties dispersed their trucks going different directions. The primary landfill that they started going to was Crawford County.
And again, so it's not the fees,
It's not the
it's
fees.
waste industry and flow and,
It's the flow.
so again, I just don't think.
And there's economy, and there's all kinds of.
Now, Brown County has a very convenient, cross-traffic across, the river to Kentucky with a very good bridge that they recently built, and that's about, not recent, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but it takes a lot of truck traffic, and they get a lot of waste from Kentucky.
Right.
Athens Hocking District gets a lot of waste from West Virginia.
They do.
And some of that is the coal ash from the mines, but they get a whole.
And I did not include, I only included MSW.
Yeah, but they're using, they're using the coal ash as,
Alternative daily cover.
alternative, daily cover. Coshocton, Fairfield, Licking, Perry is getting waste from West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and DC. Their landfill rates are over $100 a ton. And their rates, I don't know what their rate is, but it's 20, 25.
Right, it's $20 to $30 a ton.
Somewhere around that rate. So anyway, we're looking at flows of waste that aren't affected by tipping fees. And not affected by tipping fees, not affected by $2, $4 district.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. If you want to raise the fees to generate more revenue, you're a policy committee, that is obviously your prerogative. It's just not gonna say, I don't think it's gonna say landfill space, being on the border of Indiana.
I think, I think your report is somewhat inconclusive.
And I introduced it that way in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I go back, and I want to point out that, the charge that we made for the study, and I'm going back to the minutes, from last meeting, the policy committee requests district staff to contract for financial analysis and programmatic analysis on what would happen if Tier 2 fees were changed for saving landfill space. That may be a difficult task, maybe an impossible task.
Well, and that's what I said several times, that if I had 12 districts that had changed their fees,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna make things up.
What,
But there was only 2 districts that raised the fees, and in both instances, the overall amount of waste that came in increased.
yeah,
Now, I'm not gonna try to extrapolate that to Hamilton County,
right.
but,
Because they're not border counties.
Right.
And, yeah.
And so you're not seeing,
And they're not-
you're not seeing saving landfill space as an opportunity.
I'm not saying it could not be an opportunity. I'm saying, based on what I've researched,
Yeah.
it's not a definitive
Not a
conclusion.
guarantee.
Yeah.
And that's like even in my conclusions, I say may and could, and
It's inconclusive.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right, Rumpke could always lower their fees, and draw in waste from, at any time.
right, or take their waste that they collect from Indiana and bring it here and swap out from here
Yeah.
to Indiana.
I can see that as a possibility too.
Yeah, and that's where you're unique as well, is that, your landfill
So it's an unknown.
owned and operated by a large regional waste management company.
Okay, so, thank you.
Yeah.
I think thank you for the report.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's a question that we've been asking, that we wanted some, information related to it. I'm sorry that your data set was so small.
I am
Can't lie to
But I hear you,
Yeah.
if we wanna raise money, then it's one thing. If we wanna divert trash, then maybe.
Better to do it locally.
Yeah, maybe not the right solution. All right,
All right,
thank you.
thank you very much, everyone.
All right, we're gonna move on to 6B, the environmental enforcement program.
I do have one further comment on the fee structure, and that is, I would like to bring, I would like to bring back the fee structure conversation at the January meeting.
To what end?
To bring forward the $2 to $4, proposal with 50 cents, a year increase. Now that we have the report, the meeting last month, indicated that I put on hold that proposal in lieu of the report from Karen, and that I would bring back that proposal, revised based upon the proposal the report. And I'd like to bring that, proposal back in January.
Is there anything else Karen is gonna do? Or any additional investigation?
I mean, I've got all this data, so there's no more research, but I did
You
hear
had
that
mentioned, I think, the city once.
cross analysis by tons and stuff like that, but data is what it is. My only suggestion I think you need to come up with what that compost facility would cost before you start generating revenue. I mean, if you can get a brownfield site, your CapEx would be very minimal. If you have to do a greenfield site, it's gonna be a lot higher. But you may not be raising your fee enough. You don't know what your budget is. That's my final.
Okay, so I'm hopeful that we won't have to have this presentation again
No.
at the next meeting. So, because we've talked about this a lot. And so, yeah, we put it on the agenda for the January meeting. Are you suggesting we have a vote? Is that what you're suggesting?
We have not had a vote on that issue, and I would like to have a vote on that issue.
Okay. Is that okay with the policy committee?
In January?
Yeah.
Sure.
You mentioned the city.
Yeah. And because we felt also that the report was a bit inconclusive, a little short on some facts, although there's a lot of variables.
When you say we, you, or we, you and Bob, or who's the we?
The city,
Got it.
yeah, city administration.
Can you give us a little more detail on what you mean by that, city administration?
That we would like to see, we just thought that the report, if this, do you feel that this report makes you say, no, we don't wanna raise the fee? For me, it doesn't seem like it has enough information to make that decision because the sample was so small,
No other information to go on, however, and we've got a consultant's recommendation. So I'm comfortable with the information I've received. I don't know what other information we're going to get.
Can I make a comment?
Okay, hold on 1 second. So I got another comment card. So we have public comment at the beginning of the meeting. So that's why I have not called on you. In general,
People commenting.
yeah, generally speaking, so Tim asked that he be included as we discussed an item. I will allow that this time. I'm trying to run a meeting here, and keep some control over what's happening and give everybody the opportunity to speak, when it's most appropriate and when items come up or at the top of the meeting. So I'm gonna allow you to speak. I typically, though, would prefer that people give me that indication at the top of the meeting so that we can keep ourselves organized, okay?
Not aware of that.
Yeah, well, I don't recognize you, so come on up. It's your first meeting, welcome.
Thank you.
You got the pleasure of the floor for 3 minutes.
That's correct, I've not been here before. My
That's
name's Ann Fairflag, I'm with Butler County Solid Waste District. I sent some comments to Michelle in September that I would love for her to pass along to this committee for their consideration. Namely, that there are some economic consequences of this for the surrounding solid waste districts that have to be considered and weighed. This is an economic burden that would be borne by the residents and businesses just outside of this county. This facility where the waste is tipped at Rumpke's Colerain Township landfill is a regional facility that is relied on by the private sector for their waste management. Butler County relies on a generation fee, which is only $1 a ton, and it generates about $530,000 a year on which we operate our solid waste district, all of our services, and we have a small staff of 2, including myself. Our commissioners have made it their mission to be as conservative fiscally as possible with the powers that we have as a solid waste district to generate revenues. Those revenues are all accounted for specifically in programs that are outlined and approved of on an annual basis, and they're outlined in our solid waste management plan. But I think this idea of doubling the out-of-district fee as a burden that would be borne on the backs of the private sector needs to be heavily weighed by this board and by the commissioners as a collective. If they are going to pass this over to all of the regional businesses that generate waste, that's just a function of operating as a business. And we all are grateful for, and many use, Rumpke as a landfill to deposit their waste. It doesn't require us to haul waste at great distances, which also has environmental impacts, which are negative. So I'd like that to be considered as well. If that waste is not going to be deposited in Hamilton County, there are consequences. I also thought Lucan's comment about the $2.4 million additional revenues that would be generated by this increase that could only possibly result in a 3% waste diversion increase is an absurd amount of money to be spent without any guarantee of increasing diversion. And I think this board needs to weigh that extremely carefully. And I think that government is not in a position to be taking money without a strategic plan for how it will be spent, and without some safeguards on what you're hoping to accomplish. I'm not sure that any of the waste that's currently being sent to Rumpke in Colerain Township will actually go elsewhere. I think that it will just be a more expensive option for the private sector. And that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question real quick. It'll be very quick.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, Butler County does have an approved solid waste management plan, approved by Ohio EPA.
Yeah, oh, yes, most definitely. That's a requirement of Ohio Revised Code.
What's your diversion rate?
Our diversion rate varies, from sector to sector. So we have seen a plateau in our waste diversion rate, similar to what, Ms. Lucan reported, and I think that's being seen across the country. I'm not sure that raising fees will, increase diversion considerably. And I think government is not necessarily in the best position to increase diversion.
So your diversion rate is, you don't?
It's about 23%.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments.
Thank you.
All right.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, I know you're trying to get this done, but.
Well, no, thank you, thank you, and I didn't mean to be rude, public comment is at the top unless otherwise indicated, so thank you.
I want to go back to the question, and maybe I didn't state it clearly, Sue, is when you say, you clarify what you mean by the city administration. Is that your department? Is that the Department of Environmental Management? Is that the city manager? Is that the city council? I'm just not clear on the administration.
Well, the city, we have a Green Cincinnati plan, and in our plan, we have goals. And one of them is to increase the cost of waste to hopefully divert it, because typically waste, or the cost of things changes people's behavior. People always are looking for a deal. And so that's one of the strategic goals that we have in our Green Cincinnati plan. And so that's one of the things that our administration is looking to enact in whenever we have an opportunity to do that. And this is one of those opportunities that we could potentially, save space in the landfill. I know it's not guaranteed because of all the different waste flow things, but it will give us there is a chance, as she said, unlikely will. So unlikely will it change us. So she's saying it's still going to come here. But then to Karen's point, to have that income for some significant infrastructure changes, and also one of my concerns is the reducing the toxicity of the waste stream, and the county having enough money to fully restore the household hazardous waste program. And that's because, like the top three problems with landfills, the reason we want to save space in landfills is so we don't have to open more. And that's because the problems with landfills are they're generating greenhouse gases, that there are toxins, and the leachate from these landfills are affecting people's health. So I think that we need to invest those funds to reduce the toxicity of waste going to the landfill.
Not to continue the conversation, but I am curious. So it looks like your plan says to reduce waste for residential by 20%. Did I catch that right?
Yes.
Cincinnati plan. Do your city residents pay for landfill?
Well, they do through their taxes, yes, sir.
Or are they being subsidized by commercial business? So if we raise the landfill fees for in-district waste or out-of-district waste, how will that impact a resident within the city of Cincinnati versus outside of the city of Cincinnati limits? That would be a question that I would.
Well, if we were to raise fees in district, then that would be a heavier burden on our general fund that pays for recycling, that pays for waste, pays for police and fire and all those.
Under the plan or under the administration, are they planning on incrementally increasing waste costs at the same rate as a township or a village or a city outside of the city of Cincinnati would be impacted by an increase in fees?
Okay, I didn't understand that.
So right now, if we consider as a policy committee raising fees,
Yes.
what I understand from looking at the Green Cincinnati plan for all of about 30 seconds is that residents currently aren't paying for trash service. they pay taxes, but they don't actually pull
They
out a
don't get a
wallet
direct,
and
yeah,
bill.
correct, they don't get a direct bill.
So they will not feel any impact of an increase on waste, and therefore, in their minds, potentially not see any reason to change behavior. However, in the townships, the villages, and the cities for which Hamilton County Public Health represents, many of which will see a direct impact if we raise fees. Am I looking at that incorrectly, or is that a correct
The
statement?
fee increase that we're speaking of is not in district fees.
Although to the point Karen made, then we might see an increase since we're within moments to Indiana, particularly the Bondurant landfill is moments away from Indiana. In fact, it's essentially bordering Indiana. If we increased fees, and we saw, for in-district, and we see an increase in out-of-state waste, will that not have an impact in the township of Whitewater, where they might see an increase in trash from Indiana or Kentucky?
It doesn't increase fees.
I guess I'm just not drawing the same, if our goal is to reduce residential waste, I don't see how in the city of Cincinnati will have an impact by changing fees.
The proposal on the table does not increase the in-district fees at all. It doesn't touch the fees on any of the impacts that we're studying here.
Got it.
Yeah, it doesn't increase the fees. If we're talking about changing waste flows,
But I don't know that we're changing any behaviors of Cincinnati residents, or county residents, I should say, for their waste, which sounds like it's one of the goals that you're referencing.
One of the goals of the changing of the fees is raising enough funds to do, extensive composting of food waste. And food waste is 24% of the waste stream. So it could be a significant diversion of, a jump if we can capture that food waste.
Got it.
So you can't put the infrastructure of the food waste collection and processing without the monetary resources.
Got it.
This would be the monetary resources. Yeah.
So we just jumped around from the goal of being reduced waste in landfill to increase in fees for money into the district.
It's both.
Yeah,
It's in the
and that's the
proposal.
first time I've heard that articulated, which is fine. I
It's
just- that's the first time.
articulated in the proposal. It's in the writing.
Okay.
It's in the writing.
All right,
It's both.
so what I'm gonna ask of this committee, if everyone is,
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
oh, wait,
I just want to state this. I don't think you answered my question, or maybe I wasn't clear on it. So there is nothing in writing from the Office of Environmental Management, say the director, the mayor, the city manager, or the council saying that they support the fee increase. Is
Well,
that true?
I don't have anything in writing.
Okay.
Right,
That's
and
fine.
as I mentioned kind of at the last meeting, I know that there are a couple council members who are advocating for this, but I don't know how the council would vote.
Okay, that's fair enough.
okay, so, policy committee. I'm gonna ask if we take this up in January, that we be ready with we gather information that we need to make a decision here, because Bob's gonna ask for a vote, that we be prepared to do that, so that we don't have to have another presentation and another debate. We've debated this many times, but be prepared to vote, and I'm gonna ask everybody to do their homework, so that we're ready in January to take a vote on that.
And I would also ask that the proposal that I have in writing that's before you has both elements, the increase
Okay.
for reduction as well as the increase in fees to pay for programming,
Okay.
the new programming.
I just haven't read it in a couple months, so.
I understand.
Forgive me.
I understand, I
yeah.
totally understand.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the next item, environmental enforcement program. Michelle, is this yours?
I believe you skipped.
Oh, I'm sorry, we jumped way down.
Yeah.
See how optimistic I am? All right, no, the aspirational diversion goal, my apologies.
That's okay. So, this was a presentation I was going to give at the last meeting, but we didn't have enough time. So I'm going, rather than skipping it again, I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as possible, with the hope that, you'll be able to think about it and get back to me your thoughts. We don't need to have a long discussion. How to make that happen. There we go. Okay, so, the aspirational diversion goal, this is not a requirement in our solid waste plan. We do not have to have this. We are already exceeding, the state mandated goals. However, it is in the end of chapter 1, and it is basically, like it says, it's an aspirational goal. This is a goal that the county would like this to meet, by the end of the 15-year planning period. right now, it is 1 percentage point, I want to make that clear, not a 1% increase, is 1 percentage point a year. And so the reason that we want to have this is, we've never put this in the plan before, we want to continue to be a leader in diversion, and I think having the goal, having something that we're working toward will help staff do that. And it will help with policy decisions as well. So just want to give you kind of an idea of where we're at. In 2021, we had a 56% diversion rate, so that's overall. That is all composting, the food rescue, everything. So it is great. I mean, it's great that we're diverting 56%, but now we've got 44% more to go. So how do we get there? A few factors that you're going to kind of cringe when you see the numbers. So the 56% includes flue gas desulfurization from the Miami Fort Power Plant, which is recycled. It's a significant tonnage, and that plant is scheduled to be closed in 2027, I believe. So when that happens, we will no longer have the tonnage from that, and that will dramatically decrease our diversion rate. It hurts to see the numbers, but that doesn't mean that anything else has changed, right? So I want you to expand your mind to think about that it hurts me too, but just be aware that is, so overall, if we didn't have that diversion today, our diversion rate would be about 45%. Okay. So it is significant. So this is overall, since the beginning of our time, that we started the district in 93. So you can see it goes up and down. I do want a few caveats about this. This is all based on voluntary surveys. And Ann knows it's hard to get, people to report. So this is all based on voluntary information that we're getting. We do think we're capturing the large, Rumpke always reports to us. We know we're capturing the large numbers, but there's quite the spikes there. In 96 and 2002 are from large industrial sources that reported once, didn't report again. So it can kind of change. But I put in the black line there so that you could see the overall that we're increasing, which is great. So I'm going to go through the three different areas. Residential diversion rate. So when Karen and I worked on coming up with an aspirational goal. It was great to have Karen's help on this. We didn't just shoot a dart in the dark. We were trying to come up with actual what could the big programs, we couldn't go through every single one. But what were the big areas that we were talking about focusing, and how could we divert those? Food, without any, and I'll talk about this a little more, without any large composting facility, we could essentially see a 15% additional diversion, and that would be about 6,000 tons a year. Mixed paper, cardboard, we've talked about focusing on that. Plastic film is another area that there's a lot of that going to the landfill, and the plan talks a little bit about that. And then automatic recycling, continue this effort of switching communities that have subscription recycling. We see that increases. And then also trying to get not just the recycling, but also the yard waste in the communities to increase that. So overall, we were estimating, 26,000 ton increase in residential. Commercial is a bigger sector. If you remember, 86% of the waste generated in Hamilton County is the commercial and industrial sector. So there's more potential here. I think that 25%, these are all doable goals. We thought, we could do this. That would be, 23,000 additional tons of food a year, and then so forth. So the compostable fiber, that's a new stream that we've not targeted before, but it was something that came out in SWACO's composition study, so we think we probably have that in ours as well. So much larger increase in the commercial sector, but we think that is achievable. Industrial sector, this is where it's, you're really squeezing a lemon that's already been squeezed. Most of the industrial diversion is, they kind of take care of themselves, so to speak. We continue to help them, but we do think that food is an area, if the anaerobic digester comes online, it's very possible that the industrial diversion we could squeeze a little bit more out of that one. So, right now, this is where I said you're going to cringe when you see the number go down. But so right now, if we hit that 1 percentage point a year, this is where our diversion rate would go. So, the reason that I had wanted to give this presentation is, and I had talked to Bob about this, do we want to set a higher aspirational goal with the idea of, hey, we're going to get some sort of organic processing facility sited in the district in the next 15 years, so we're going to hit a higher goal. And I'm sorry, this tape's on the wrong end. But I did write, so SWACO, pulled up my competitive side, but Franklin County has a diversion rate goal of 75% by 2032. So if we wanted to use that as a possible, they are right now they are in the works of trying to build some sort of composting facility. But SWACO, again, owns landfill properties. They have a much different district than us. But, right now, we are higher at our 56% than any other large urban county in Ohio with diversion. But if SWACO builds a composting facility, we will not be higher than them in diversion. So I guess I'm throwing it out there. We don't have to discuss it now. We could, you can get back to me even in an email with comments if you think we should reach higher than that 60%.
So, if you don't mind, one thing to say, all of these numbers, there are specific strategies and budgets and implementation requirements. So we didn't just pull out numbers, we really had a half-day, full-day work session of really working through, we're gonna put numbers in, we gotta say how we're gonna get there.
So, some quick thoughts there. First, US EPA considers the national recycling rate at about 34%. So being at 45% is good. I think we should look at it that way. Because you're well above the national recycling rate. SWACO's 75%, I think, is unrealistic to look at. I don't think we should be looking at that, because they have monetary resources, and they've got governmental properties that they're working with, and they also have powers that this district doesn't have. So I don't think that's realistic. What I recommend, and this might be for a January discussion, not today's discussion, but looking at the different sectors and seeing what the diversion rate could be for each of the sectors, for each of these, for 2030, 2035, and 2040, for each of the sectors, what could they be bumped up to with the programs that are suggested in the plan, as Karen is noting. How could those diversion rates be bumped up, and then combining that to an overall diversion rate? And what does that show us?
I like that.
With the given plan, and seeing how that presents itself. And that might be a January discussion then.
I was gonna ask you how much of this is incorporated into the plan.
As far, all of it is. So all of our numbers we pulled from actual programs.
Yeah.
As are the action strategies?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm thinking pulling the numbers in a different way from each of the sectors, finding a sector by sector diversion rate, and then a combined diversion rate. You might come up with the same numbers, but you might come up with something different there. And I'm using benchmark years of 2030, 2035, and 2040. That might match what other communities are using as goal years.
All right. Any other comments? Okay, so you want us to contemplate the appropriate diversion rate goals?
And I can come back with, based on, more aggressive goals, if we wanted to reach this percent, this is what we would need to do.
Okay, and I think that it's helpful to see it by sectors.
I think it's helpful.
We've seen that to an extent already, where it's been broken down into residential, commercial, industrial.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
To a point Sue made earlier, is there any benefit to looking at like waste strength and diversion? Like, if we could have less significant impact in the landfill by having a higher diversion rate for waste streams that were more environmentally impactful?
Okay.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
I think that's a very good idea.
We're gonna come back to the organic.
Yeah.
Probably.
I think it is.
Yeah, by removing the organics, we can probably do the most good.
Yeah. Well, that's why food was at the top of the list
Yeah.
and everything. Why? Yeah. Okay,
Good idea.
thank you. Thank you.
On the aspirational goals, and I would like to defer this to the January meeting, we are running out of time. So, on your handout, behind the, fee increase is aspirational goals that I would like us to consider. And this is a rewrite of what our, public members have been, talking about, and that is the, trash, recycling, and organics, collection throughout the county. And it is not a rule-oriented, it is aspirational goals that could be, tightly fitted into, the plan and the planned activities. And they're aspirational goals. It is a rewrite, and it is not mandatory, it is not rule-oriented, it is not a requirement, but an aspirational goal. And I'd like you to read through that and maybe re-present this at the January meeting.
Are you suggesting that the district team work and come up with ideas that might get us to
Exactly
the
that.
aspirational goals?
Exactly that. As an example, just as an example, and I don't want to take up too much time, the universal trash concept could be the district staff working with the townships and assisting them in rewriting their contracts and working a clause into the contract that might address the missing addresses that people are not contracted on. And that could be optional conversation between the hauler and the township for those townships that are contracting. Doesn't address everything, every concern of mine, but it is a way from the staff to be working hand in hand with the hauler.
Bob, that's already in the plan. There's already data analysis if we get them from subscription to contract.
Exactly.
But that could,
This is
we already did that.
This is complementary, but additional. This is additional to what's in the plan, but complementary to what's in the plan.
If I understood what Karen was just saying, is it's in the plan already, so adding it as an inspirational goal is a replication of what's already.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is additional, but complementary to what's in the plan.
More
Okay.
aggressive deadlines.
It's not necessarily more aggressive, but more,
Sorry.
more directional, more language, more aspirational is the way I would put it.
So I think it would be helpful to get analysis from, staff to, pair these with what's already in the plan, so we have a better understanding of that.
That's a very good idea.
And so we can, make an evaluation.
See where it pairs
Yeah,
up with the
that's right.
plan.
Okay. All right, thank you. And if you can bring that in January, Michelle. All right, and actually provide it to us prior to, so that we can be prepped. We're prepping for two things now, policy.
Oh, yes.
All right, the next item is the draft organics diversion plan.
Honestly, I think I was overly optimistic of how quickly the first two would go, so, I would be fine with holding off on this discussion. I think it's a solid 20 to 30-minute discussion of the organic plan. I also think it
Yeah.
really ties in with the aspirational goals, since that, we've talked about having that so heavily tied to organic. So it's good with that. I mean, I'm certainly happy to present it,
What
but
is
I'm
the
just
pleasure
giving you a
of the
heads up.
committee? Do we want to hold this till January? Assuming that in January, we are not going to have, I don't mean to rush meetings, but we do have a lot of items to cover, and so I don't want to have a repeat then in January of everything we just did. So I'm assuming it'll be abbreviated on items 1 and 2, so that we'll have time for item 3, which I think is critically important to the work that we're doing, with, namely, related to organics. So, all right, if that is the pleasure of the committee, we will hold that until January. I see a lot of head nodding, all right? The next item is public member.
Yes, so Mr. Getter's,
Yep.
term ends in January this year, so this was something that we,
Next year.
we're going to, January of 2023, yes.
Yep.
And so, we've gone through a couple times, the 4 statutory members are the ones who vote on that, and the last 2 times that we've had a position open. We formed a, smaller subcommittee of 2, people to interview, possible applicants. So we already have the application, ready to go since we've done it twice in the last year. I think we would just need a interview committee.
You're asking for volunteers for the interview committee?
Yeah. Volunteers.
Do those have to be statutory members, right?
That's how we've done it the last
Yeah.
year. Can do it?
I'll do it.
There we go.
I'll do it.
Looking at my successor. All right, thank you.
Well, you did it last time.
And,
I'm down a key position right now. I'm busy.
well, there, and Michelle will obviously help run the process, accept the applications, and establish the interview stuff. Okay, thank you. And when does the process start, Michelle?
Next week we'll, send it out to start, gathering applications. I'm not sure how long we gave them last time. I think we gave people a month to submit.
30 days.
That was like.
Okay. All right, Bob, there's been a recommendation that you reapply. All right, we're gonna go to item number 6, third quarter performance measures.
And that can just be accepted as you've seen it. This is, we're doing great on performance measures. I don't know if there's any questions on any of the stats that are in there.
Anybody questions?
I would have a question on the public member. If a selection is not made and the person's not seated by January, would I be included in the January discussions or not?
We made a motion, I believe, at the last meeting, I'd have to go back, that you would be the member for
To
January.
extend you one.
Yeah,
one
that's
meeting.
what I remember, but
Yeah,
I
I'm sorry, I
wasn't
forgot.
certain.
Yep, yes, extend you one meeting so that you could participate
You
in that
requested
conversation.
it,
Yeah, and we said yes.
Thank you.
So does that change our process?
No, not at all.
Okay.
So it would just be a vote at the next meeting, even though Mr. Gutter were here. The person who would be replacing him, or if it was something again, would not be here at the meeting.
As a seated member.
Yeah.
I would
we
step
wouldn't be
out
until
of the
March.
room for that vote.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry, I forgot. All right, we're on, attachment D. Any questions, comments? All right, let's move on to attachment E, environmental enforcement program.
Yeah, this is, the activity of Deputy Peak, through the end of October, so he's in the room if anyone has any questions. Attachment E.
Welcome, Deputy Peak.
Thank you, ma'am.
My staff did a ride-along with the deputies. They thoroughly enjoyed themselves. I'm gonna have to go myself now, because they were bragging so much about, I think it'd be super interesting. How many of you have gone on a ride-along?
I wanna do that.
haven't, no.
Right, before you go, if
I
you're
wanna
going,
do that.
you gotta
I
go.
wanna do that.
Yeah, okay, all right, so I just did up some business for you. Yeah,
The list in January.
sorry?
You right up front?
We'll be fighting to run shotgun.
Right back.
I'm gonna bump Bob out of the front seat. All right, so anything that you would like to
Only, not in, October, but this month I've had an uptick for some reason in tire dumpings. We've had a rash of them that have been 30 to 40. We think we've come in on it, but,
Yeah.
because that's, priority obviously, but, I mostly do the dumpings, but for some reason I'm tires.
Where at, what neighborhoods? Don't
With
wanna
all
say.
due respect, District 3 in Cincinnati,
Got it.
Yep.
I've seen it. Price Hill, Westwood area.
Cuff has them too, they're all over the neighborhood. Okay,
It's, we think we know where it's coming from,
oh,
but, it's just.
hard to catch.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
during our ride-along, we're gonna catch the guy. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you for the update. Household hazardous products program update.
Yes, we had a very successful, household hazardous products, drop-off event in October. I say successful because nothing blew up and nothing was back up onto the road, so that was great. And Dearborn did a great job. And yes, and Sue, the longest driveway
I've ever seen.
So, yeah, it was a wonderful location as far as, it was the smoothest that we've done. Shara has an update a little bit on the survey that we did, the post-survey, and then a little bit on the 2023, program, just a quick update for you.
Yes, so, we had 1,804 people register, but we only had 1,093 people show up.
Oh, wow.
It was a 2-day event so that we wouldn't have to worry about, cutting off registration, which we didn't, like we did the previous year, but, our numbers just keep going down, or at least the last 2 years, they just keep going down. So this was the least amount of people I've ever seen.
In the survey, we asked why people who registered didn't show up, and the majority did say that the location was not convenient. That was 65%. It was on the far west side, but our previous year, it was on the far east side. So we got a lot of complaints from people on the west side that we've never had anything on the west side. It's always been on the east side, and it really kind of has. So that's why we focus on the west side. In the survey, they also said 66% said it was a convenient location for them. What I thought was really interesting is we asked how often they utilize the household hazardous waste drop-off program, and 46% said this was the first time. So I think we really did reach a lot of people that have never accessed it before by having it on the west side. So I have other information on demographics and how we promoted it. We really bumped up promotion this year as well. We don't have the price, the cost in yet. We haven't received that information. But those were the most significant things. Next year, we're still working with a RF or a proposal that we received to hopefully have an event where up to 5 communities will do their own collections within their communities and then bring it to a larger collection site that will be available to everyone in Hamilton County. The hope is that we also had a significant number of people say they didn't come because they didn't have transportation. So we're hoping that by having it in smaller communities and them doing the collection that they'll have better access. So that is one major thing that we have concerns about is that it's just not accessible, when people have to drive it really anywhere, so.
Right, so this is the program we've talked about in terms of not doing this larger event in the future, but rather promoting smaller events that are more accessible?
We will still do a larger event next year, knock on wood. But we will also allow up to 5 communities to do their own collection events and then bring the material to the larger event so that it's closer to people's homes to do the collections and kind of feel it out and see how it works. And in the contract, it would also say that the following year we could increase the number of communities that can do it. It's a model that Cuyahoga County has, and they've been really successful, but they have a much different situation. They have a site where they can actually do the collection. So they have a facility where they could collect the stuff from the community. So we're just trying to kind of figure out how something similar could work here.
I didn't quite understand your numbers. How many people sign up, register?
1,804.
And how many actually showed up?
1,093.
Okay.
And actually, so the program was on a Friday and Saturday, and we actually had 685 on the Friday and 408 on the Saturday. So we had significantly more people on the Friday, and it was during the workday on a Friday.
That's interesting. And then when you asked why those that did not show up, why they did not show up, they said it was not a convenient location.
That was the highest percentage. When you registered, you didn't know the location.
Let me finish, please. That makes no sense to me. They're registering for
I
it.
think they decided they didn't feel like driving that far that morning.
Okay.
I mean, if you want me to analyze it.
I didn't know the location till I registered.
Yeah.
You had to register to find the location. So you registered.
But we did say it was in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, I remember, because I looked at it and that's what I remember too.
Yeah, we
You
did
had it
say
there.
what community it was in, we just didn't get the exact location.
Right.
You didn't want people showing up, huh?
Well, we wanted them to register.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've got a ton of compliments on not having long lines and it being very well organized, and, sometimes we have backed up onto major roadways because we don't, space people out, so we really felt that it was important to have a registration.
And who donated the location?
Crossroads Church.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for the update. Yes, thanks for the update. Okay. All right, item 7, Michelle?
It's just that the next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, January 18th, and it's at 3 p.m.
Right? Anybody have anything else for the good of the order?
I just want to briefly share a small success story. My office and the Ohio EPA, over the course of many years, have been working with the Ohio Attorney General, and we're successful at having a polluter in our community pay $550,000 for illegal C&D dumping on the east side, Evans Landscaping. In addition to the penalty, $140,000 of that will go to the Little Miami Conservancy for a project. And we are also doing some exploratory digging and finding waste in which we will further require cleanup and mandatory remediation.
That's at the same location?
It's on the east side. You
I
can
know.
find it in the
know where.
press release. There's a couple gravel pits that were being filled with crushed C&D. So I'm very proud that my team stuck through that process, and we got things straightened out.
Good job.
Real quick, I just passed around a proclamation of the America Recycles Day, which was yesterday. President Biden, proclamation, America Recycles Day's been celebrated for 28 years, and and the second page was the history of American Recycles Day, which was born by the National Recycling Coalition, and I just wanted to give you a little history there. So, happy National Recycles Day.
Yeah, very nice.
And regarding the universal waste program, I was wondering if we could waive the attorney-client privilege and share the opinion with our constituents who have been advocating for it.
So, Nifong, we need a vote of the policy committee to waive privilege on a document that right now is a privileged document.
Correct. So I would make a motion
I'll
that we
second.
would waive it. Okay.
All right, any
Second.
discussion?
I'm gonna abstain, I just like some time to look at it further, not necessarily.
All right, well, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? All right, very good.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
I just wanted to say thank you to all of you serving on the board. I mean, this has been, I think we're all trying to grow in the same direction. We're all trying to do the same stuff. And so it's good work that we're doing here. And I just want to keep good open channels and relationships, and just, with it being Thanksgiving coming up, just wanted to say thank you for serving on this. I've been in this for 33 years, and this is the most active board that I've ever worked with, and I am pleased about it. So, thanks.
Very good.
And the plan is almost done.
That's right. And we'll see you all in the new year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happy holiday season, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Thanks.
Need a motion
Oh,
to
move to adjourn? There we go. All right, something done? Can I get a
I'll
second?
second.
There we go. All in favor?